Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for tonight's Thursday night single game showdown slate on FanDuel and DraftKings between the Bengals and the Jaguars. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. And in this 10-minute video, we're going to give you some lineup construction tips, both FanDuel and DraftKings, low risk and high risk contests, run down some injuries, and then some general strategies to help get you to the top of your single game contest leaderboards. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Just click subscribe right below the video. That way you get access to all of our videos. We're doing basically a video per day here on YouTube, so you don't want to miss any of those. Give us a thumbs up if you'd like the showdown content and want to see more. Any questions, comment below. Hop in our Discord channel, which you can access by clicking the join button right below this video. So let's jump right into it. Bengals, Jaguars. Bengals 7.5-point favorites tonight. When's the last time we've said that about a Bengals squad? So yeah, 46.5-point total. Quick injuries. T. Higgins, you already see the tag here. He is out, wide receiver 2 for the Bengals. He missed last week as well, so we can draw week 3's routes and snap data to see what we expect tonight. And as a result, we expect Auden Tate to be the wide receiver 3. He ran basically double the routes that wide receiver 4 Mike Thomas did. So keep that in mind. And the Bengals have a couple of defensive starters out in their defensive secondary, so a little bit of a boost to the Jaguars' passing game in that regard. And then the Jacksonville kicker, Josh Lambo, he's out for a personal reason. His backup, Matthew Wright, who's on the practice squad and will be elevated today, Thursday, he's not in the player pool as of 10:30 this morning. So if you're eager to roster a 7-point underdog kicker, tonight's not your night, unless FanDuel or DraftKings decides to add him to the player pool later today, which is certainly possible. So, low risk contests, 50-50s, double ups, head to heads. We talk about this every single showdown video. Our goal, as we talk about in our NFL Showdown Strategy Guide, in these types of contests, is to try to capture all of the scoring in the game. And we do that by playing both quarterbacks and both running backs when it makes sense. This game, it makes sense. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, the two quarterbacks in this game. Joe Mixon, large market share of both the rushing and receiving backfield work for this Bengals offense. He's in there as well. James Robinson, his role has increased a little bit more, thankfully, and he's the guy to target in low-risk lineups. Now, this just leaves $900 left if you try to captain Joe Burrow, so let's think about this. Remember I mentioned the T. Higgins injury? Auden Tate, yeah, let's keep scrolling. He's just $400 as the wide receiver 3. Sometimes we'll get these slates, sometimes we don't. But anytime we have a receiver or a player that's going to play 50% plus the snaps like we expect Auden Tate to do, and they're priced this cheaply, even though they're not a capture all the scoring type of play, they're pretty much a must play in low risk contests because sharp players are going to jump all over this. So Auden Tate, $400. Now that leaves you just with just $1,400 left. There's no one really to play here in that regard. I guess there's a couple players you could play here, but so this calls into action a couple of lineup constructions. You could remove Joe Burrow from the captain spot. The Bengals are 7.5-point favorites in a decent total game. So you could play the Bengals kicker. You could play the Bengals defense. Both are options on DraftKings. The key here, however, is though these 5 guys are the top plays you want in your low-risk DraftKings lineup. However you can make them fit and whatever fit you feel the most comfortable with, that's what you should go with. Now, if we hop over to FanDuel, surprisingly, it's difficult to make a low-risk lineup because FanDuel doesn't want us to succeed, and they won't let us roster both quarterbacks and both running backs. And a seemingly common trend this year, if we try to roster both quarterbacks and both running backs, that leaves us a little bit of a lisp there, leaves us with just $4,500 left over. If you've been watching these videos, you'll realize that often when we've tried to use this type of lineup construction, there's $4,500 left over. It's like FanDuel knows something about this double quarterback, double running back scenario, and they don't want it to happen. So what does this mean? It means we have to drop one of these key guys if we're playing low-risk lineups. For me, the quarterbacks are always a must. The running backs on the favorite team is always a must. And when you have a 7-point road underdog, generally their running back is the one you can drop from this lineup construction. So that's James Robinson. Joe Burrow, Lawrence, and Mixon are pretty much must-haves on FanDuel and low-risk lineups. So that leaves you $82.50 per player. It gives you a bunch of different ways you can go. Roster Cincinnati's kicker, play a value play 2 mid-range values, whatever you can do. But we feel like this is the best way to start your low-risk FanDuel lineups. Now, let's hop over back to DraftKings and let's consider high-risk contests, our leagues, our satellites, our GPPs, lineups where we need to get a little bit different than the field. Now, If you, a lot of times I like to run an optimizer to see what the field is expected to do. And no surprise, especially when you look at the pricing and you see three of the top four guys are Cincinnati players. If you look at most projections, the top 3 to 5 guys are Cincinnati players in this game. So the most optimal lineup or the most likely used lineup are Bengals heavy lineups. 5 Bengals, 1 Jag. 4 Bengals, 2 Jags. On FanDuel, definitely 4-1 type lineups. So what does this mean? We've talked about this before, this underdog strategy of playing at least 2, 3, sometimes 4 underdogs. And it makes sense for this Jacksonville game because they have 3 receivers that are getting most of the target. James Robinson is getting a decent amount of work. Trevor Lawrence is obviously throwing a ton and throwing deep, which is generally high value. So playing Jacksonville players more often than the field does is a great way to approach this. So if you look at our projected ownership in our occupied model, which is linked below, we have projected ownership for every primetime showdown slate. We project Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon to be roughly 20% at captain, which is on the higher end. We normally don't see guys get that high on most slates. So with them being that popular, if you do decide to go that route, you have to understand that you have to either, especially with Joe Burrow, pair one of his cheaper, lower owned options. So that could be, if we scroll down here, that could be CJ Uzama, the tight end, 4K. Not a lot of people will play him, right? It could be Mike Thomas, who's their wide receiver 4. Even though he's playing less routes than Auden Tate, he's going to be significantly lower owned. If I can find him. Let's try the search bar. How's that sound? Yeah, he's $600. He's actually more expensive than Auden Tate. No one's going to play him. $600, right? Maybe a backup running back like Chris Evans, who has only played 7 snaps this year, but he's got 3 targets in those 7 snaps. They like to use him when he's on the field. So he's a very cheap option too. And if you play a quarterback, you generally want to stack them with 2 pass catchers anyways. So I think a rule tonight for Joe Burrow lineups is make sure one of those pass catchers is of the lower owned variety. Now, Joe Mixon may even be more popular than Burrow. And what you have to do here is leave salary on the table, depending on how big the contest is. If it's a larger contest, you want to leave at least 1,000 left over, maybe more to get different. Play probably 2 lower owned plays in the flex. And I think an option tonight is, we talked about this on our Premium Showdown podcast this morning with Colin Drew of Daily Roto. If Mixon is the optimal captain, it means he's getting touchdowns, he's getting most of the productions on the Bengals side, which could mean that we end up with multiple Jacksonville players in the flex spots in these types of lineups. So just playing, and again, I'm just clicking names here, but let's see, let's find one more. Right? These types of lineups rarely hit, but a 2-4 construction, which means 2 players from the captain team and 4 from the non-captain team, doesn't hit very often. The field rarely does it, but I think on a night like tonight, it could make a lot of sense if you play a really popular captain. So keep that in mind. The other option, and the easiest way, is to just play the underdogs, right? All the Jacksonville receivers, Trevor Lawrence, James Robinson. Not as many people are going to do that as 7-point favorites or 7-point underdogs. But again, the volume is there, and they can easily be the highest scoring player on tonight's slate. And I think that's the route I prefer tonight. One other note I didn't mention when I was talking about the injuries, Dan Arnold was traded from Carolina this week to Jacksonville. We don't know how much he's going to play just because he was just traded and has to learn the offense. So there's a couple different Jacksonville tight ends. Just keep that in mind as you're building for tonight. Chris Manhertz, Jacob Hollister, because he had 6 targets in week 3. Jacob Hollister did, so keep that in mind. All right, let's go back over to FanDuel. We expect Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon to handle 70% plus of the MVP roster popularity for tonight. So what does this mean? The same exact thing it means as on DraftKings. If you play those 2 captain or 2 MVPs, you have to leave salary, get different. Obviously, you could play Trevor Lawrence as the underdog quarterback here. The other option, you could play someone like Jamar Chase or Tyler Boyd and hope that if Joe Burrow throws multiple touchdowns, they catch all of them. Not out of the question. So I think in a 46.5-point total game, it's a little tough tonight because I think the MVP percentages are pretty spot on. So to me, I think it's probably Joe Burrow with at least 1 low-owned pairing with him, Joe Mixon and leaving a ton of salary, or probably Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence pairing him with 2 of his Jacksonville receivers is the way to go for high-risk contests. And again, we're going to detail all of these strategies in our our daily plug, our Thursday edition at occupyfantasy.com. That's normally posted by 4 p.m. Eastern. We always link it in the description below here on YouTube. So make sure you check back this afternoon if you're an occupyfantasy.com member. All right, and that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you once again for listening. We always appreciate you stopping through, taking 10 minutes out of your day to watch our videos. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get notified when all of our videos go live every single day, every week of the NFL season. Give us a thumbs up to show your support. Any questions, comment below. More importantly, get in the Discord, talk with other members. We had a lot of members last night mentioning that they found great success in MLB DFS just because they were talking with other members and staff in the Discord. It's an invaluable resource, so make sure you click the join button here to get access to our Discord server. So, Brian Jester from Occupy Fantasy, appreciate you listening once again. Good luck tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.